You probably noticed in my prayer that I used the term the end of the road. And it became a standard joke among us as we were traveling to these different places. Because we are visiting places where the road ends. In our desire to minister to the poor and to find where the poor are, you can find them anywhere. But if you want to find the real poor, you go to where the road ends, and then the local staff has a nasty habit saying, it's just 5-minute walk. Well, you know what that means. It takes probably, whatever, in the sweltering heat and uncomfortable terrain, not a half hour, 45 minutes, or an hour and a half walk, but in the end, you will find the poorest of the poor with very little connection to the outside world. The local staff has been there. They have been gone before us, so it usually is pretty safe. But there is another thing about going to the end of the road. See, Yanni and I have had that discussion when I first started doing a bit of this travel, because the poor you find everywhere. You find them here in Ottawa. Yanni is working with Ottawa Inner City Missions, and every week she faithfully goes and washes their feet. And I bless her for it, because I'm not sure I'd like to step in her place. These people are poor. But see, the question is, am I willing to go out of my comfort zone, mentally and physically, and do those things that God wants me to do and reach out to the poor, to the end of the road and a little farther? So how far do we go out of our comfort zone to do what God wants us to do? To find out where his heart is for the poor. See, so we make that a joke. We have made it a joke. Where do you find the poor? At the end of the road. Not only the physical road, but also often the end of the road of my comfort zone. God is answering prayer. And at that time, there were over 1 million people in camps. Today, when I was there, we drove around the same areas, 95% of the camps are empty. And I believe that that is what God is doing. Here is part of a group who is playing a vicious game of basketball. And we talked about that the next day. It was very interesting. The one thing that I noticed, and it is important to remember, I think it is important to remember, when I was watching them play basketball, some of them were very good. They were vicious, but they also were very good. But some of them, you could see, they really didn't know what they were doing. The ones who were very good, every once in a while would stop and make sure that a person who was not so good got an opportunity to try and throw a basket. And I thought, that is significant. Because I tell you why. I just figured out over the last 4 months the difference between the poor in North America and the poor in developing countries. The poor in developing countries, most of the time, still are part of a community. The poor in North America, you will find they are shut out. Due to circumstances or whatever, society is paying money to keep them out of society. Think about that. But I think that is what is a huge difference, and we can learn from that. I can learn from that. I spent, when I was there, 1, 2, 3 days to rub shoulders and to talk to church planters that were right in the area. And some of them would come to a central location on the bicycle, or they walk for half a day, just to be there to listen to me, or actually to listen to me, but also to rub shoulders with their colleagues. So altogether, I talked to about 60 church planters. And that is probably in an area the size of Greater Ottawa. It's phenomenal. They are in the community, they're helping to build the roads, they're helping to build the homes, to make the bricks, and they are living out the gospel message. Pray for them if you can remember. Pray for them. Those church planters are challenged tremendously. Because I tell you why, they're looked at as the pastor of the village. And usually it's the only one. And they get to be the pastor and the minister of peace and the judge and everything else, because the civil authorities are really not present. So every problem that two neighbors have or that a family has, guess where it ends up? In the lap of the church planter. And here he is trying to bring a message, and these guys and their wives, they have to be like Solomon. Because if they part with one side, they're damned by the other, and if they part with the other side, then you know exactly what's happening. And they told me the stories of land claims and all the stuff. Pray for those guys and for their wives, because the challenges are great, but they are there on the front line. Actually, they are living out what we as an organization stand for without our help. There's one more thing that they also are doing, is home groups. Now this is right in Kitgum, and instead of having one home group, 4 years later, they have 25 home groups. And it's just people in the church who invite people every week. This was Matthew's home. Matthew, incidentally, is, he's not in the picture here, but we had a lot of fun. They didn't think that I should be sitting on the floor there. But that's a whole different subject. So God is at work, and the church is at work. And it is wonderful to focus, instead of promoting on our website and in our talk and in our whatever we do to raise funds, saying we are sponsoring children. We are saying we have a poverty revolution going here. We are experienced in addressing poverty. It's what we do, and we do it because Jesus did the same thing. Forget about all the ways of raising funds. Let's get down to the bottom line. We are working to eliminate poverty, not only physical poverty, but spiritual poverty, because the message that we bring is a message of hope. We are delivering hope not only for relief of physical poverty, but spiritual poverty. That's what Jesus' heart was. That's why we are not ashamed to live it out. Looking back, I see Central Africa, and I've looked at this picture, even last night. I just sat there looking at it, and that's Africa. When you look at it, you see on the left side a wall of new bricks. On the right side, actually, it's a wall of mud. And you see the tree that actually is just about dying, but it's full of blossoms. And now you see the countryside behind that part of Africa. It's so fertile. It's beautiful. Why is there so much poverty? God wants to reach out to his people in those parts and love them and bring not only the people but also the creation that he has made. He wants to bring it closer to himself.